Hi guys, Dennis here, and welcome to part 1 of Picker Views. In this video, we'll create a simple picker view containing animal names. Pickers are widely used throughout iOS development, so you'll need to master them. We'll populate this picker from a plist that we'll build from scratch. So let's get started. Okay, let's go ahead and open up Xcode, select Create a New Project, and we're going to start off with a single view application. Click Next, and we'll call this project Simple Picker View. We can leave our class prefix blank. Make sure devices are set to iPhone. We won't be using storyboards, but make sure automatic reference counting has been selected. Click Next, click Create, and we have our project. So the first order of business is let's jump over to our zip file, and we've got to add some objects. And actually, before we even do that, let's go up here to our file inspector, and we're going to deselect auto layout. That subject is for another video, and we won't be using it in this one. Okay, back to our objects library. Let's drag an instance of UI picker view onto our zip. And first stop is we're going to go to the size inspector, and we want to pin this to the bottom of the view, so we'll change that. Next, we want to go up to the connections inspector, and we want to connect the two outlets. And to do so, we select data source, click and drag over to Files Owner and Release. We'll do the same with the delegate. Click, drag over to Files Owner and Release. Okay, now we need a couple of labels. We'll scroll up to the top of the screen, drag a label over, and this first label, let's extend it out and adjust it right in the middle. And let's go to the identity inspector, and we'll center that text, and we'll change that text to selected, spell that. There we go. The next label is going to be used to display what we've selected in our picker view. So let's widen this up a little bit. And we want to center the text. And we're going to delete the text that's in there because we're going to add that text programmatically. We're going to need a few properties, so let's go ahead and do that now. Let's close out our Utilities panel and open up our System Editor and add our properties. We'll Control drag from our label. This will be an outlet, and we'll just call this, let's call it Animal Label. Click Connect, and then we need one for our picker view as well. And this will be an outlet as well, and we'll just call this Picker. Yep. And connect. Now we can close out our inspector. Okay, now we're ready to jump over to our header file. Let's first close out our Utilities panel. Now we'll jump over to the header. And the first thing we need to do is ensure that our class file conforms to the UI picker view data source and delegate protocols. And we add protocols with an angle bracket. So UI picker view data source, and we need the UI picker view delegate. And we'll close that off with another angle bracket. Now we need to declare a property for our animals array. And we'll make this non-atomic and strong. This is an NSArray, and we'll call our array animals. Okay, now before we go any further, it's time to create our plist that holds all our animal names. And to do that, we do File, New, File, And we want to select resource and then property list. Let's click next, and we're going to call this property list animals. Click create, and here's our property list. Now we're going to make some quick change here. We're going to select dictionary, and we're going to change that to array, and then we're going to just start adding animal names. And as you can see, I've added 15 items of animal names that I could think of off the top of my head. So there's our plist. So next up, we're going to jump over to the view controller implementation file, and we're going to synthesize the three properties that we created. And that is animal label, animals array, and our picker. And one of the benefits of synthesizing, obviously, is it eliminates the need to use an underscore when referring to these in code. So now it's time to allocate an initializer array, and as usual, the best place to do that is in the viewDidLoad. So first, we're going to create a string called path to hold our file location. Remember, we don't have direct access to file storage in iOS, so we use the bundle object with main bundle and the path for resource methods. So let's first create a string. We're going to call the string path, and this is going to be used to hold our file location. And we need to do an NS bundle, main bundle, and we're going to choose path for resource. And the first thing it's asking us for is the file name or resource name. And if you recall, our resource name is called animals. So we do a string animals of type, and the type is plist. Actually, it's plist, technically. We want to make sure that everything is spelled correctly in this method and there's no typos, otherwise it won't be able to find the file. Okay, so now that we have our path, let's use it to initialize our array with the contents of the file we created. So we use animals equals NSArray, we do an alloc, and we do a init with contents of file. Oops. Here we go. And for the string, we'll just put our path string in there. Okay, before we leave this method, let's code it so our array is sorted alphabetically, and that'll make for a more attractive picker view. So to do that, we use animals equals animals sorted array using selector, and we'll use compare. Okay. Now the next thing we need to do is find our UI, picker view, data source, and delegate methods. And before we go off on that hunt, let's add a pragma mark so we'll know where to put those. Now incidentally, pragma marks are really useful in being able to locate your methods quickly in code using the jump bar. If I were to scroll up here and just open up our jump bar, you see that I have a pragma mark, UI, picker view, data source, and delegate methods. So it allows me to find that very quickly. So now we have a section where we can put these methods. And incidentally, pragma marks, they're simply ignored by the compiler, so you can put those anywhere you want. Okay, so let's go to our view controller header file, and we're going to option click on picker view data source, which takes us to a dialog box where we can see the link to the header file. And under our picker view data source, we'll see the required methods as well as the optional methods. And right now we're interested in grabbing the 2 required methods. So we'll just highlight that and Command C. Jump back over to our view controller implementation file, and we'll paste those right under our pragma mark. Now a little housekeeping here, we have to add curly braces to each of these methods. And now we're ready to begin coding. So let's start with the number of components in picker view. And think of components as representing columns in our picker view. A good example would be the date picker, which could have a column for the month, one for the year, one for the time, and so forth. In this example, however, we'll just have one column for animal names, so we'll return 1. Next up, picker view number of rows in component. So next, getting the number of rows in the component will be just like the method number of rows in section when configuring a table view. We'll simply grab our array name and use the instance method count to determine the number. So return, our array name is animals, and we use the instance method count. So we're still not able to see any results in our picker view if we were to run our application. That's because there's still one more method we need to implement, and that is the title for row. So let's go grab that. We'll click on the header file. Once again, we'll option click on the data source. And if you're wondering where this is going, this takes us deep down inside the foundation framework. And framework, if you recall, if I can just jump over here for a moment, is what's under here, which is automatically loaded when you start a project. So let's option click on Picker View Data Source. We'll click the link for the header. We'll go down to Data Source, and we're looking for an optional method this time. And as I indicated, we're looking for the title for row, and that is right here. So let's go ahead and copy that. We'll do a Command C. Back over to our implementation file, and let's tidy this up a little bit, give ourselves some little room. And we'll add it right after the number of rows and component section. Once again, we need to add our curly braces. So here we want to grab the name at each row of our array. To do that, we return our array name, which is animals, with the parameter row. Return, and then animals, and the parameter row. Now we could have also written this statement in longhand, and that would have been written like this: return bracket animals object at index, and then we use the parameter row. Either way works. I prefer the shorthand way. So let's go ahead and delete that. Okay, I think it's time to build and run, so let's do that. See what we have. And it looks pretty good. Looks like the picker view is scrolling nicely. It is in alphabetical order. Looks like the only thing that we're missing is when we click on an item in the picker view, we're not getting a display. So let's code that now. And to do that, we're going to need one more method, and that's a delegate method. Let's jump over to our header file. And this time we'll option click on our picker view delegate. We'll click once again on the link. And this time we're looking for the did select row. And that happens to be the last item here, so let's go ahead and grab that, Command C, copy it over, jump back over to our implementation, and let's tidy this up a little bit, and we'll put it as our last method. Now we need curly braces, and to code this, first of all, we need a string to hold our selected animal name. So let's create our string, and we'll just call this selected animal equals our array name, animals, and the object at index, and we'll use the parameter row. And now that we have it in our string, we need to assign that to the text property of our label. So animal, this time we'll use label.text equals our string selected animal. Let's build and run, see what we have. And now we can select camel, and camel appears in our label. Dolphin, monkey. So that's working nice. However, there's one last problem that we'd like to address. Did you notice, and let me go ahead and stop this, that when we first run it, nothing appears in our label. So wouldn't it be nice if this automatically showed the first item in our array? So, and that's really easy to code, so let's go ahead and do that now. So we'll close that, and we need to go to the viewDidLoad method. So let's use our jump bar and select viewDidLoad. And we need to add just a little bit of code here. And that's, animal label dot text equals our array name, animals, object at index, and recall that the first index item is at index 0. Let's build and run and see what we have. Okay, notice that we do have something in our label now, bear, which is the first item, so that's working fine. It looks like everything's working. Okay, that wraps it up for part 1 of Picker Views. In part 2, we'll take it to the next step and build a picker view with 3 components, in other words, 3 columns. So stay tuned, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.